Welcome once again, everybody, to the Anderson Law Power Hour podcast, here with attorney Tim Anderson, who I have officially knighted Virginia's Second Amendment expert. You've got questions about the Second Amendment as it is at the forefront of the news. You'll be able to ask those here with us live on Facebook. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the author and guest. This podcast realizes only for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Also, there is no attorney-client privilege. Feel free to ask your questions. Post those as we go along with the program. Legal consultation services will be determined at the time of your appointment. Anderson Law is a firm located here in Virginia Beach, 2492 North Landing Road, Suite 104. Online, as of course I'm sure you found out, virginialawoffice.com, virginialawoffice.com. The number here to the office for your services, if you'd like to ask of those, 800-1000, 800-1000. Of course, the area code is 757. Moving full steam ahead on this, man. It's an exciting time.
It is an exciting time.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. All right, so for those of you who may be tuning in for the first time, every Tuesday we do a segment called the Anderson Law Power Hour. It's a chance to engage directly with me and directly with Mark, ask questions. I can't promise you that we're going to get every question answered, but it lets you participate in the program and be a part of it. Simply type your questions in the comments. We will try to get to as many as we possibly can. So let's highlight the past week.
That's right. Pocosin.
Honestly,
City of Pocosin.
It is worth the clap. If you're subscribed to my Facebook page, I videoed the vote for Pocosin last night, and what an amazing turnout from people came up and spoke, the council listened, and then the council voted, and if you heard some of them say overwhelmingly in support, emphatically supporting, Pocosin is on board with 59 other jurisdictions. Mark, how many are there?
95 in the Commonwealth.
95. Think about that. 59 of the 95 jurisdictions, certainly more than the majority of the counties, have declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries. Now, get this. Yesterday, Governor Northam said that we are going to get a grandfather clause for the prohibited weapons that are going to be illegal to own next year. Now, I've been saying this since day one. We need a grandfather clause. We need a grandfather clause. We need a grandfather clause. Now, he has said there will be registration, and I know lots of you have concerns about registration. The fear is that you register your firearms, the government knows where you are, and the Gestapo can come to your house at a future date and time and seize your firearm. So let me talk about that for just a little bit. Now, I did a video this morning where I stood on the North Carolina border.
Very symbolic. Got it. Yeah.
And so the North Carolina border is right behind me. I'm in Virginia. So here is where we are. Of course, we don't know where we are on anything because no laws have passed. But we know that the governor says there's going to be a grandfather clause. So assuming that that is true, here is what we need to talk about with what that means. It means that you're going to have to register with the government your prohibited firearms. Not all your firearms, just your prohibited firearms, which are mostly going to be like modern sporting rifles, right? And when we're talking about, what that generally is going to mean is you're going to have to enter your information and your gun serial number into some kind of governmental database, and that way there, if law enforcement comes into contact with you after the expiration date and says, hey, are you on the registered list, then you could say, yes, here's my confirmation, and then that firearm is protected. Okay. Now, if you don't want to do that, there are multiple other options that you have, and we're going to talk about that. But before we talk about the other options, as I said before, if you purchased a modern sporting rifle in the state of Virginia from a gun dealer, your information is already on file with the gun shop. And the state police have the authority to come in on a criminal investigation and investigate those records. Now, what I think is going to happen is that when we send information up to the state police, you buy a gun from me, it's a rifle. We tell the state police, you bought a rifle, right? It does not say it was a modern sporting rifle. It doesn't say it was a .22. It just says a rifle. And I think what the state police are going to do is they're going to say, we want to see all the rifle transactions that you have. And now keep in mind, we have to keep these records for 20 years. And so they can come in and say, we want to see all your rifle transactions. Then they're going to get a list of all the people that purchased AR-15s. Then they're going to compare those people to the people on the registry. And then I think they're probably going to open criminal investigations for the rest. And then they're going to come and find out if you have the firearm in your possession. Now, if you have an AR-15 in your possession and you're not on the grandfather registry, then you're going to be committing a felony. And that's a big deal.
That's it. You're touching right upon it. I think that's a lot of what we're concerned about, the fear of registering, but you've got to stay legal.
You have to stay legal. Virginians, we need you to vote in 2021, and if you become a felon, you're not going to be able to vote. You're going to go to prison probably. I mean, it's a big deal. So if you don't want to register, here are your two options. One, you can modify your prohibited weapon into a weapon that would not be prohibited. I saw a guy on my Facebook today saying that you can put a bolt action on an AR-15, and it's a pretty simple process. Okay. And so if you put a bolt action, meaning that the firearm won't automatically load itself through the semi-automatic process, then that would make an AR-15 legal because you would have to manually, shoot, do this mechanism. There are going to be other ways to modify it. I'm not a gunsmith. I do own a gun shop, but I'm not a gunsmith. There are going to be other ways you can modify your firearm. You might be able to put a fixed 10-round magazine in it that can only be top loaded, taken off the telescoping stock. Whatever it is, there's going to be ways to modify it. So you can modify it. That's going to be option 2. Option 3, you got to get it out of Virginia, okay?
Yeah.
To not be committing a felony. Now, that's what I did in the border this morning. I said, it's illegal on this side of the state, and then it's legal in this state. And it's just, an imaginary line on the road.
But
right, one side it's legal, one side it's not. So if you do not want to register your firearms and you do not want to modify your prohibited firearms, your solution is going to be to evacuate them to North Carolina. Now, all of you have said, oh, you're giving in, you're compromising, all of that. Let me tell you something. We're not compromising anything, okay? We have nothing to compromise with. The Democrats run the whole show. Right. So what is happening is the ground is swelling,
yes, and
the Democrats are listening.
Yes,
even the governor.
Yes, yeah.
59 jurisdictions have said Second Amendment sanctuary zones. The ground is shifting under their feet, and they are a little nervous. This is not, in my opinion, some predetermined plan by the governor. This is the governor trying to save face with his constituents, saying, hey, we're still going to do it. We're going to give them a grandfather clause, and we always intended on doing that. But, it just was inadvertently left out of this super complex Senate Bill 16 that they came up with, which I think is total baloney.
That's hilarious. If everyone ever get a chance to read that, take a couple of minutes. It's just, I guess I was talking to a friend. I guess they write these things with the idea of throw it against the wall and see what sticks.
Well, and a lot of times people say, hey, if we ask for the moon and then we settle for something less, which less maybe nobody would have agreed to. But keep this in mind, fellow gun owners. No one is agreeing to anything. This is what is going to be dictated to us because the Democrats are in control. Mm-hmm. And so our voices are shaking the ground, and they are conceding and softening the implications of this. And as far as I am concerned, when I woke up yesterday morning, grandfather clauses were not on the table.
That's right,
And today I woke up this morning and grandfather clauses are on the table. And so that is better today than it was yesterday. Mm-hmm. And we keep talking and we keep pushing. We may get better than that, but we have to keep going to these city council meetings.
Yes,
everybody says no compromise, all that. Keep showing up. Keep convincing your localities to declare these zones.
Write those letters.
Write those letters.
Write those letters, man.
Get on them. I can't imagine that the delegates aren't getting thousands of letters a day.
Sure.
Yesterday alone, 100,000 people connected to my Facebook page. 100,000. Right. And I bet you a good chunk of you after last night wrote your delegates.
Yes.
Can you imagine being a delegate and, which is generally a pretty low-key job, and waking up and there's 20,000 emails in there? Can you imagine the expression on their face when they got that? And so keep going, Facebook. And, you know, a lot of you are saying I'm a sellout, and a lot of you are saying I need to grow some balls. I mean, I'm reading the comments, right? But let me just tell you something. We are talking. We are standing up. We are getting our local leaders to stand up to Richmond, and it is changing the overall outcome. Because like I said yesterday in the Colby video, the courts are not going to back us.
Right.
And the state of New Jersey passed a law that said you're a felon if you have a high capacity magazine, and the federal courts are letting that go through. And so if Northam wanted to put all the screws to us,
right,
he could say no grandfather clause. But he is backing off of that because he sees the backlash from the Virginians.
That's right.
The backlash. And so it's an amazing thing.
It is exciting. Thank you for being the point man, so to speak, and leading us through that. You took the words out of my mouth, and that's what I'm thinking about. God forbid that HB 16 and all the others go through as they're written. July 1st comes around, 12:01 a.m. I happen to have possession and own one of those, rightfully so. I become a Class 6 felon.
Yeah, you're committing a Class 6 felony. 1
year to 10 year, 1 year up to 10 years,
yep.
$2,500 fine.
That's right.
And may I say this in highest respect to you, if you've ever had to hire a lawyer, it's not cheap.
It's not cheap.
It's not going to be $100, $200, $300, but they're worth every dime, because every ounce of gold, because that's your freedom.
That's right.
That's what I was thinking. A good friend of mine was like, man, before you know it, we'll be saying, yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and then July will be here. It's like, wow, what's happening in Richmond?
Yep.
It's real.
And you know, if they say something's illegal to have, and you have it, and you get arrested, and you get charged, the courts are not going to back you up, and you're going to go to jail. You're going to be a felon. You're going to possibly go to prison. And you know, so a guy like me, who has a young family, who has to earn a decent living to support my family, I can't risk that. So what does a guy like me do? A guy like me is going to evacuate his weapons to North Carolina and put them down there until this gets sorted out up here, right?
Right.
But now we don't have to, because now we can exercise our grandfather clause if we want to do that. And Facebook, as far as I'm concerned, it is not a big giveaway to register your firearms, because the state police can get to the gun shops on their own. Now, certainly there are other ways to get firearms. Maybe you bought them in a private party sale. Maybe you're a gunsmith and you milled your lower and your upper and you put it all together yourself. Sure, but the vast majority of us bought our guns from gun shops.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of us are on record for buying that. And the government has access to those records if that transaction occurred in the past 20 years.
That's right. I think some folks are bucking up, so to speak, against the fear. One of their fears of registration is that the government's going to come in, they're going to find out everything I own, and then next thing you know, I'm one of those Class 6 felons. But registration, the information is already there, and the state police do not need a warrant.
They don't need a warrant.
They don't need a warrant.
And you know, somebody said that on my page, and I posted that. I said, look, we have it's called a FFL manual with the state police.
Yes,
and I posted that on Facebook today on one of the comments. They can come in anytime during normal business hours and look at the forms under the guise of a criminal investigation. You don't think that they're going to come in and ask for every rifle transaction that my gun shop has sold to get a list of everybody who purchased a rifle? Now, obviously, they're going to look and say, okay, this guy bought a 22, he's out. This guy bought, a bolt action, he's out. But all the AR-15s that my gun shop has sold can be looked at in a criminal investigation. And then they're going to compare that to the registry, and then they're probably going to go and start looking at you guys individually. And somebody says, "Are you scared?" Yeah, I would be very scared.
I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
I would be very scared to willfully break the law, knowing it's not an if, but knowing factual that the courts aren't going to back us up. You know, not only do the Democrats have the governor and the House and the Senate, but they also have the courts. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals has said Maryland's assault weapons ban is legal. Okay? It's legal. And it doesn't infringe upon the Second Amendment. It doesn't infringe on Heller. They said that a year and a half ago. So we don't have any support. And so no, it is not I am not the guy that wants to get arrested for a felony and get convicted and then take it all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States and hope to God that those guys hear my case and then hope to God that they had a good breakfast that morning when they're hearing my case. No, I would not do that. Not for that kind of a risk. I would not take that risk, and that is something everybody's going to have to decide on. Okay. So let's kind of flip the other things.
Right.
So Senate Bill 16 is a funny bill. It's very long and it's very complicated.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's hilarious, I say respectfully. But
there is something about magazines in there about having 10 or more. The way it's written currently is that it's not going to be illegal to own a magazine holding more than 10. It's only going to be illegal to purchase and sell after the period of time in the future. So if you have a firearm that holds 14, it's not going to necessarily make that magazine illegal. However, there were bills last year that were proposed that would make them illegal. Mm-hmm. New Jersey made them illegal, felony illegal. So when this whole thing works its way through the system, are we going to see something where magazines could be illegal? You have to understand that Senate Bill 16 is not going to be the law on July 1. It's going to be some variation of it because things are going to change. Yeah. We're going to see, we've already seen the governor say he's going to throw a grandfather clause in there, so that's going to get in there. There's probably going to be other changes that get in there. So we have to watch and see whether or not we are there. So, okay, so kind of let's talk about the red flag laws.
Yeah.
So red flag laws, we've talked about this many times on the Anderson Law Power Hour. The Anderson Law Power Hour and I have always said that this is crap. Okay, I am not for red flag laws. However, they exist all over the country, and there is not one single court system that has found that what they are doing is a violation of the Second Amendment, a violation of due process and all of that. So again, we have laws that are going to be imposed on us without the courts backstopping us saying that this is okay. Now, if you are subjected to a red flag law, that means the police are going to come to your house and they're going to seize your weapons because somebody filed a statement that you are mentally unstable. Right. And you're going to have to go through the process of getting those firearms back and proving that you're not mentally unstable. It's terrible. It's outrageous. But it sure would be nice if a court had stepped in along the way and said this is unconstitutional, but there hasn't been one. And people have challenged them and they've lost. Okay? So there's not been a court that has found that red flag laws violate the Constitution or the Second Amendment. So they're coming, and they're going to get it. Something like that is going to get imposed on us. It's going to be something where you're going to have a short window of when the cops come to get your guns to when you can go to court and be evaluated, and then it's a short window. Either you get your firearms back or they can withhold the firearms for a period of time. Yeah. That's what it's going to look like. Haven't seen even a bill yet, but it's going to look something like that, and that's coming.
Let's go to one of those hypotheticals. In the event that someone has a complaint and they send my name to, or they make a phone call to the police, and they come and sit down and talk to me and tell me they're going to take my weapons. And in the interim of that 14-day or 10-day or 30-day or whatever time frame, someone tries to break into my house.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that's the, and
you can't have a firearm.
You cannot have a firearm.
Nothing.
No. And it would be a felony. In the other states, it's a felony to have a firearm if you're under a red flag order. So we haven't seen even a bill come out of Richmond yet, but the governor said it's coming, and I believe him when it comes to that. Now, Facebook, I'm watching your comments, okay? And I don't want to be disrespectful here to people that are commenting here. But to say that all gun laws are unconstitutional or anything in that degree, it is just patently untrue, okay? The Supreme Court has said that the government can place reasonable restrictions in the Heller case over unusual weapons, and the courts are carving out exceptions as to what these unusual weapons are. The Supreme Court has weighed in. They interpret the law. Do not drink the Kool-Aid that any law violates the Second Amendment. That's just not true. And more specifically, in the Fourth Circuit, we are in the Fourth Circuit in Virginia, and the Fourth Circuit said that Maryland's assault weapons ban is constitutionally legal. They challenged it on Second Amendment grounds. They challenged it on ex post facto laws. They challenged it on taking clause. They challenged it on you can't make people felons overnight. All the stuff that we've been saying. Right. And the Fourth Circuit has said none of that is good enough. All the state has to do is show a compelling state interest to promote public safety.
Yeah, you can't go buy or own an M60.
Oh, yeah, you can't go buy a rocket launcher. You can't
Right.
go buy a
Dragon,
some type of a surface-to-air Stinger missile system. Right, you can't own that. And the question of whether we can own modern sporting rifles is before the Supreme Court in the case of Warman versus Healy. Now, the Supreme Court may agree to hear that case or they may not. But until the Supreme Court decides to rule on Warman versus Healy, we are bound by the law of the Fourth Circuit. Even if the court in California, which recently ruled that magazine restrictions are unconstitutional, we can't use that law in Virginia because we're bound by the precedents of the Fourth Circuit.
Okay.
So even if you file your complaint in district court in Norfolk or Alexandria or Richmond, the judges, even if they agree with you, can't follow that argument because they have to listen to what the Fourth Circuit says the law is. They're bound by the precedents of the Fourth Circuit.
Okay.
So please understand that, Facebook. This is not a I'm just trying to educate. I'm not trying to argue, but to say that anything is violation of the Second Amendment is absolutely untrue. It's not founded even by the Supreme Court of the United States. It's not true. It's the courts have found restrictions. There are restrictions. Restrictions are coming in Virginia, and we are not going to have court backup. So now we're in a position of what can we do in the minority?
Yes. Where can we do it?
We show up at city council meetings.
Yeah.
We ask them to adopt resolutions. We have the community involved, and if 70 of the jurisdictions come on board, 2/3 of the majority of all the counties and cities, then maybe all of the Democrats up there are listening.
Yeah.
Maybe they're like, damn, 2/3 of them are
right. But that's what's happening.
That's what's happening.
As we speak, yeah. I want to get your insight on what the fundamental 101 type perspective would be if I were to sit down and write my city mayor or whomever. What would that basic letter be? You don't want to go into detail and drown them out, but you just want to make a point.
I think people have asked me that. Can you give me a form letter? No, I'm not going to give you a form letter. Write it from the heart.
Okay.
Tell them they're just men and women just like me and me
Right.
and you. They just want to hear from their representative, who they're representing. They just want to hear from the people. Just write a letter. It doesn't have to be overly charged. It can just say, listen, I live here. I don't want to see this law pass. Sincerely, Tim Anderson. It can be as simple as that.
Yeah.
Because really, here's truly what's happening, okay? There's no way the delegates and senators can read all the emails, okay? So what happens is that their aides intercept these emails, right? And then their aides are going to give their boss a report. Boss, 682 emails came in support of this bill, and 384 came in against this bill. And that's really what it's about. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It can just be an email that says, I support this bill or I don't support this bill. Could take 30 seconds to write because all it's going to end up being is a statistic to the delegate so that the delegate knows what the community is saying.
Okay. Very basic 101 kind of thing,
yeah.
the way of speaking. And it's interesting, Tim, I know you've been keeping abreast of this more than any of us, but in Poquoson, for example, that was straight to the letter. They said no. But Mayor Johnson, in highest respect to her, in Suffolk says she has to wait, and they're not going to declare Suffolk, which is a conservative city, highly conservative. They're not going to declare a Second Amendment sanctuary city until the state declares it unconstitutional.
Well, I think that is she did say that. She said this fight needs to go to Richmond. She's right. Okay, the mayor's right. It doesn't.
We need to go to Richmond.
We have to go to Richmond.
Okay.
We have to have our voices be heard to the people that are making the laws. But it was kind of a, cop out, I think, to not engage. Suffolk had the opportunity to engage. And listen, a Second Amendment sanctuary city isn't saying it's legal to do something in Suffolk that it's not legal to do under state law. It's just saying to the police, minimally enforce this law as much as possible. These laws that are coming down, minimally enforce it. You walk into in Poquoson that just made their sanctuary. You walk into Poquoson, into a Walmart in Poquoson with an AR-15, you're going to get arrested. Okay, if you're not grandfathered in and all that, because you have a prohibited weapon. So police have to arrest, but does it mean that they have to, actively open criminal investigations for suspected people who may have these weapons? No. I mean, they don't have to enforce investigations. And so we have to understand what a Second Amendment sanctuary is. It's a political statement. I've been saying this from day one, and Richmond is now listening.
Yeah.
So
It states that the cities or localities will not use public resources to enforce any unconstitutional laws.
that's right.
That's what they're not going to use those resources. You said they were.
But the trick about that, unconstitutional laws. Here's the thing: the Fourth Circuit has already said these laws are constitutional. So so if a city says we're not going to enforce unconstitutional laws, and the highest court in the United States governing Virginia, other than the Supreme Court, the highest court in Virginia says these are constitutional, now what?
Right.
It's a political statement. It's a political statement just saying people need to stand up. Now, the Supreme Court could finally decide Warman versus Healy and put an end to all of this one way or the other. The Supreme Court can say, yeah, the citizenry can own AR-15s and high-capacity magazines, or the citizenry can't, in interpreting the Second Amendment.
Right.
They could put an end to all of this here in Virginia, in California, and Connecticut. They could define what it meant of what kind of guns we can own and what kind of guns we can't own. They could do it once and for all, and that would require them to accept the Warman versus Healy case.
Okay. You got that. See your screen flipping and flipping and flipping.
Yeah,
a lot of good questions.
86 so far.
Yeah, I want to go back to the grandfather clause because I know I touched upon this in one show. But my dad hands me down XYZ type of weapon, and I have rights to that. It's safe for me to own that under the grandfather clause.
Yeah, I think again, we haven't seen it.
Okay.
But yes, a grandfather clause would protect the ownership of the well, basically it allows the weapon to remain in the lineal chain of the family. Now, I don't know what they're going to propose, and maybe they will put some kind of a backstop in this where it says once that owner dies, the subsequent heir doesn't get that grandfather clause. I don't know. We're going to have to see. But that could be something you could write your governor and delegates
That's
about,
right. Okay.
is that there should be some kind of succession to family members of these firearms. That could be a not a compromise, but that could be a positive thing to the grandfather clause. But again, let me just say this. The courts have said over and over and over that this is a political thing, not a legal thing.
Right.
And they don't want to get in the middle of politics. If the people want a law, the courts are not going to try, not going to generally intervene in this. And so the people have voted. The people have voted in Democrats, and there are going to be laws. How do we really long-term change this? We mobilize and we run in 2021, and we run effective Republican campaigns, and we get control of the governor, and we get control of the House, and we get control of the Senate, and we can change all this. But at least the grandfather clause gives us time.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
to do that. Yeah. That's why it's important. Steve, we just talked about the death of the gun owner. Again, we're just looking. That would be a good thing to write your delegate about. Say, look, if a grandfather clause is going to happen, we want to be able for it to succeed to the heirs, to the lineal heirs. Okay, let's talk about that game plan I just said. So I pulled, and I put this up here on the in the subjects here, but I pulled Facebook, if you can see this, a list of certain delegates that won by less than 1,500 votes. Okay, and I wanted that are Democrats, so I want to talk to this. Nancy Guy, she won by less than 30 votes.
Wow.
Okay. Now, she is my delegate now. She is in the Bayside area of Virginia Beach in the 83rd District. Won by 30 some odd votes, and surprisingly, there were 39 votes of write-ins. So if all of those write-ins had voted for a Republican, she would have lost. In the 85th, which is again in the Virginia Beach area, Alex Askew won by 800 votes. All right. Now going out to the other parts of the state, in the 12th district, Chris Hurst won by about 1,500 votes. Joshua Cole won by about 1,000 votes. In the 31st district, Elizabeth Guzman won by about 1,500 votes, and Dan Helmer won by about 1,500 votes in the 40th district. And finally, get this, in the 63rd district, a Republican didn't even win, and an independent ran against the Democrat, and LaCherice Ard is the Democrat.
Yeah.
She won by 1,500 votes over an independent. Okay, so why? Oh, and sorry, there's one more. Rosalind Tyler out of the 75th won by about 500 votes. So when you're writing to Democrats and saying you don't like something, these are the people that you want to write to, because they are what I call vulnerable. They are vulnerable because they're barely in. Okay, they won.
I got your point.
But they're barely in. It's not like 17,000 people voted for the Democrat and 600 people voted for the Republican, which did happen in some places. This is vulnerable Democrats who have a better chance of listening to their constituents. So if you live in the 83rd district, in the 85th district, in the 12th district, in the 21st district, in the 28th district, in the 31st district, in the 40th district, or the 63rd district, those are the people to write to. And if you don't, those are still the people to write to. Okay, those are the Democrats just have a very slim majority in the House of Delegates, and if we can convince a few of them that some of these measures are extreme, we may see positive legislative outcome.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very possible in with 59 cities popping up and counties popping up for Second Amendment sanctuaries, that some of these Democrats may say, hey, wait a minute, I'm in one of these places, you know, and my community has said no to this.
That's got you. Yeah.
And most importantly, as a politician, I want to get reelected.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's really all they think about, truly, is, you know, getting reelected for the most part. And so they want to please their constituents. And if their constituents are yelling about not liking these laws, maybe they listen, right?
Yeah.
These are the delegates most vulnerable that I would write to. And again,
be tactful, be respectful, be cordial.
you're right about that.
Yeah.
Be tactful, be respectful.
And as you reminded us, don't threaten anybody on Facebook. Don't do that's the exact opposite effect, and it could get you in trouble.
That's right.
Yeah, stay away from that.
So I would write to Nancy Guy. I would write to Alex Askew. I would write to Chris Hurst. I would write to Kelly Converse. I would write to Elizabeth Guzman. I would write to Dan Helmer. I would write to LaCherice Ard. And I would write to Rosalind Tyler. Now, a lot of these are delegate elects, which means they weren't delegates until now. So they probably don't have government emails yet, but they will in January. And those are going to be the people you want to flood their emails on, saying, I don't support Senate Bill 16. I don't support Senate Bill 332. Whatever the bills are, we want to get to those people. Those are the ones we want to write to, because they have the closest spread to where the Republicans almost won.
That's right. Good point. And be tactful. I want to just reemphasize that. And I remember, this is kind of interesting. I just kind of was looking back at some of the mailers and all the information I received from the two candidates in my district. And each of those had more safe gun laws, safer cities. And you, based upon as much as you could do as a consumer, as a citizen, to read the flyers. I think one representative came to my house 4 times versus one party. The Democratic candidate came to my house 4 times. The Republican guys only came to my house 2 times. So I make mental note of that. But their flyers look similar. The phone calls, the texts, and the surveys, they all look kind of similar about gun laws. Boom. November 5th, we're hit with all of this.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Was that deceptive, or did I not do something right? What happened?
8 million people live in Virginia. 8.5 million people live in Virginia. About 2 million voted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's outrageous. Oh. And the Democrats won in a lot of jurisdictions by 1,000, 1,500 votes. And so if more people had gotten out and voted in a Republican House of Delegates or Republican Senate, we would be having no conversations today. You know, we would not be doing a conversation in this law office about guns. 200,000 people would not be watching the videos a week. We would be not going to City Hall. You know, it would be something different. And so what needs to happen is we need to get enough time for the Republican. I call it the Trump effect. When Trump became president, the Democrats took the blue wave, right?
Right.
And they've been winning and winning and winning because so many people are upset at Donald Trump. We are seeing the Trump effect in reverse now on the guns, where people are mobilizing, right?
Yeah.
People are mobilizing, and it is a refreshing thing to see happen. But so many Democrats won unopposed.
That's true.
And it's unbelievable.
And I'm wondering what happened to the Republican candidates. They just kind of laid down or took it for granted.
They did lay down. Sure, there's places in Norfolk that there's probably no chance that somebody's going to win, but at least we could have been in there, and at least they would have had to have spent a little bit of their money to defend, and maybe that would have been money they would have taken away from more of these closer races, and maybe a change would happen. So if you can run in a locality and you lose, maybe a Republican wins down the road because money's being spent on you when it could have been more spent on a closer race. And so it is important that if you look at click on this link and look at the people that there's not a Republican candidate, and if you live in one of those districts, you need to go to your Republican district chairperson and say, I'm in next time. Yeah. If nobody else is, you pick me, because I will run. I may not win, but I'm going to do it for the cause, and get involved, get engaged. Don't let the Democrats just take it. There's not a single, I don't think, I looked at it pretty closely, but I don't think there was a single House of Delegates spot where it was a Republican unopposed. I'm pretty sure every Republican was challenged, and a lot of them won. But there are places where Republicans won by 18,000 and the Democrats had 600 votes. That's cool, but at least the Democrats are engaging. You got to hand it to them. I mean, at least they're engaging, and we need to be doing that. Yeah.
Interesting thing about the folks going before the city council. I've seen and heard some of the most articulate, passionate citizens. They're very articulate, very concise about what they're saying, and there are no personal attacks and so forth, but it's like, wow, I'm proud to be an American. Hey, you're exactly saying what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I've seen that guy in Suffolk, I think it was, or some other locales, like very articulate folks.
When I was sitting in Pocosin yesterday, and I was watching, person after person speak, and these are not people that are generally public speakers, right? These are just average citizens, and a lot of them spoke for the very, very first time ever in their life, and they're standing up and they're talking in a packed house with people watching on TV at home and in that room. They are there talking about what they want, and it does not mean that you don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to you don't have to be a professional speaker to go to your city council meeting and speak. And maybe Newport News goes on. Maybe Hampton goes on. I'm going to be at Hampton tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be a friendly audience there, but I'm going to be there. And I'm not just showing up at the places where we're going to win. We're showing up everywhere because people need to hear the truth. I threw a couple statistics out last night at Pocosin, and I put these on my Facebook page. But there are only 14,000 people killed by homicides, by guns in the United States, of a country of 380 million people. And then almost 5,000 of those occur in big cities where there's violent crime, and a lot of gun-free zones like Chicago and Baltimore and things like that. So if you back all those numbers out, about 9,000 homicide deaths in the United States in regular America, of which there's 380 million people in the country. You have a 2 times better chance of falling off of a ladder and dying than you do of being shot by a criminal, not a lawful gun owner, but a criminal. A criminal, somebody who uses the gun inappropriately. You have a 2 times better chance of falling off a ladder and dying. And that's something to think about.
Let me add to that statistics thing. I've been reading a lot of folks who are bandying these about, throwing out, trying to justify their positions. And one alarming statistic I saw were from the Centers for Disease Control, and I have to go back and double check that. But in 2017, of the homicides that occurred and the killings that occurred with guns, about 40% of that was death by suicide.
Oh yeah, right. I read something.
Whoa, man.
I read an article produced.
Not me, not you. People who. Pardon me. Go ahead.
Well, no, I get that. I read an article that said that capacity limits on magazines would reduce suicide rates. And when I read that, I literally almost fell out of my chair.
Right.
Because when you shoot yourself in the head, it's a one-shot thing. It doesn't matter if your gun holds 10 or 12 or 15.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the narrative is so false.
Yeah.
That we're in a gun crisis. 340 some odd people died last year in Virginia, or 2017 from guns, homicide guns, and of a state of 8.5 million people, of a state that has 2 million of its citizens own firearms, and so 2.5 million people own guns. 343 people died. The reason that those numbers are so low is because the system we have currently works. Right?
Good point. Yeah.
It currently works. It is 1/14th of 100th of a percent that you're going to die in Virginia from a criminal with a gun.
Yeah.
And compared to 80,000 people died of opioid overdoses and 30,000 people died of DUIs. I don't know if these numbers are exactly right, but they're pretty close. And so it's important for everyone to understand the narrative that we're in a gun crisis is false.
That's right.
And it's further important for everybody to understand that the narrative that AR-15s are the culprit of most of these murders is false.
They're handguns.
It's handguns.
That's right.
Handguns are the culprit of most crimes, and handguns are the culprit of most suicides. Now, again, I'm not saying the handguns commit these crimes and but the preferred choice of suicide is by handgun. The preferred choice of homicide is by handgun, from criminal behavior. And so to perpetrate that we need an assault weapons ban because assault weapons are, is endangering the public is flat out a false narrative. Yeah. And when you really talk to people in the statistics of that, the Democrats don't want to talk about that, right?
Right.
The reason why the Democrats like to talk about AR-15s is you have a real problem in America with drugs. You have a real problem in America with mental health, and they don't want to accept that a lot of that is mostly caused by policies that Democrats have put out. They want to blame it on some lone gunman who shoots up a school with an AR-15.
Right.
That's the problem. It's the AR-15s. We shouldn't have those guns in society. It's a false narrative. It's a false narrative that we even have a gun crisis in the United States. Sure, a lot of people kill themselves with guns, but a lot of people kill themselves in Japan and where guns are illegal, and they basically just throw themselves in front of a train. It's so common in Japan that happens. Is that the country of Japan will fine your family for the disruption it causes to the railroads. So, if you throw yourself in front of a passenger train, you might get a bill. Your family may get a bill for $2 million because of disruption to clean it up and everything. And so, people will kill themselves one way or the other. Guns are the preferred method, but that's not because we have a gun problem. It's because we have a mental health problem.
A people problem.
We have a people problem. Why don't we have counselors in high schools that can address these at that level? I'm not talking about a guidance counselor. Hey, where should you go to college? I mean, real psychiatrists in every school.
Yeah.
Why don't we have people there? Why don't we have people that can identify suicidal tendencies, suicidal ideations, depressive personality disorders, bipolar disorders? Why don't we have them there? Because it's not a priority.
Right.
It's easier just to blame the gun owners. So it's a false narrative.
And the sensationalism of the quote-unquote assault weapon in the media's mind, and as dare I say it, rushed as the drive-by media.
That's right.
It's the sensational aspect of it. And I don't want to go there. I know we're always being mindful and respectful and tactful of everyone's listening, and some of them may have experienced a death by an assailant or someone. But I remember being glued to the television of the few times, and I was aware of it. Virginia Tech, Sung Cho Wee.
Oh, yeah.
He had a Glock.
Yeah.
and another weapon. 32 people. It wasn't an assault weapon. That's exactly what our training was saying. What type of weapon did he use? He had a Glock. Old weapon? Oh, man.
Yeah. Most mass shootings in America, meaning more than 3 or more than 4, depending upon Obama's definition or Bush's definition, but more than 3, caused by handguns.
Yeah.
So why are we trying to ban modern sporting rifles when they're not remotely the problem?
Right.
Now, it is true that if somebody has a modern sporting rifle in hand, they can cause a lot of damage if they want to. But that's really not the weapon of choice for most pieces that are true mass shootings. That's not what happened right here in Virginia Beach.
Right.
He used a handgun. And so it is a false narrative from the core. It's a false narrative that AR-15s are a crisis to America. It's a false narrative that we have a gun crisis to begin with.
Right.
It's all fake. Yeah, I'm going to be in Chesapeake. Whoever's asking that, I will be there tonight. I'm one of the speakers. I have a reserved seat in there, I guess, and I'm on the agenda as an agenda speaker. So I'll see you guys there tonight if that's the case. All right, so let's talk about the next flavor of this, which is, we have 14,000 people that die a year in the United States by homicide, by gun, but really only about 9,000 outside of the major cities, right? How many people defend themselves?
Let's go to that. I'd like to hear your point.
Around 500,000.
Yeah.
500,000 incidences each year from the statistics I can find. And I'm going to firm these statistics up before the Chesapeake meeting tonight. But around 450,000 people a year defend themselves in an unlawful situation with a handgun.
Wow.
Or a shotgun or a rifle.
Right.
450,000 and 9,000 people criminally die at the hands of firearms. So any kind of regulation that disarms the public when it's that kind of lawful defense,
right.
450,000 people, unlawful use 9,000.
Right.
That doesn't sound like a gun problem to me. That sounds like an agenda.
Yeah, man. Gotcha. Yeah.
When you really, really think about the statistics.
Right.
Now, it is easy for the left to convince the middle, it's the AR-15s. Let's make those weapons illegal because, most people don't own them. Most people, don't understand them. They, and all that. And so, yeah, okay, we can get rid of those. But it's the agenda that is behind that. If they're saying the AR-15 is the gun problem, that's no different than saying Tylenol is a gateway drug.
Right.
It's just not
false.
true.
Right. Yeah,
it's
false.
just not true. I mean, if I start a propaganda campaign that the reason people die because of opioid addiction is because they start taking Tylenol as a child, we should ban Tylenol. People would look at me like I am insane.
Yes.
But they get away with it with the AR-15 thing, and I don't understand why that is.
Yeah.
So, all right. Let's talk about a little bit more of what some of the other few laws that have been lodged and are there. Universal background checks.
Yes, we talked about that. Yeah,
we talked about this a lot. Universal background checks means that when a firearm goes from one person to another, they're going to have to go through the same background check as you would if you purchased it from a gun shop. Now, I am in big support of universal background checks, and I know people hate me for it, but I'm not here to pick a side. I'm here to try to call balls and strikes. Having a universal background check, if I have a gun and I want to sell it to Mark, he would have to go through a background check. I have no way to know if Mark has any kind of a criminal record or it would otherwise be prohibited. By doing that way there, Mark has to go through the same thing I had to go to, right? I mean, that's how it is. What if, John has a domestic violence conviction and he can't buy a gun from
That's
a gun
exactly
shop?
where I was going to go. Yeah, go
so
ahead.
he goes to Mark and says, Mark, sell me your gun. Mark's like, okay, here's the gun. And then this guy who's not allowed to have a gun gets a gun. And so I am for that. Now, the Democrats have proposed a bill, many bills, that would make it a felony for Mark to sell to John in a private party transaction. I think that goes too far. Okay?
Yeah.
I think that goes too far. Felon. That's that's a pretty big thing to call people a felon.
Sure is. Your rights will be definitively taken away.
Yeah. I mean, telling somebody they're a felon for doing something, but, there could be other consequences. It could be a $10,000 fine.
Right.
Okay. And, that would be a big incentive for people to comply.
Sure would.
If you have a $500 firearm and you're selling it to somebody and you're breaking the law and you might owe the government $10,000 if they catch you, they could do that. So that would be a good one to write to your delegates about. Hey, we don't need to make people felons. Let's just make a huge fine on them if they don't obey the law. Because really, why do we obey the law, truly?
Fear of
punishment
and the economic consequences.
Fear of punishment. Whether that's criminal or civil or whatever it is. I don't speed because I don't want to get a ticket.
Right.
I don't go to Subway and order a cup of water and fill it up with soda because I don't want to get charged with larceny. Okay, that's why we obey the law. So, do we really need to say you'll be a felon if you don't obey the law? Probably not. It could be monetary. If somebody told me it would be a $10,000 fine to do this, I would obey the law, because I don't want to get hit with a $10,000 fine. Just like I don't want to get hit with a $200 speeding ticket coming into work. People will obey the law without you having to say, you're a felon, you're a felon, you're a felon, right. You're a felon. And so that would be a good, a better way to do it. All right, what do we got here? Yeah, Justin, you're 100% right. So when are we truly going to say that the guy on the street has a mental health disorder, the homeless dude? When are we going to really look at them like that? Most people on the street begging for money have a mental health disorder. Yeah. Most homeless people have a mental health disorder. And we drive by them like they're just invisible. And so we have a mental health crisis in the United States. And until we're truly, really ready to engage people,
good point,
and provide resources to the government, we are always going to have people going out and committing terrible acts, terrible atrocities. We're always going to have, people in Paris driving box trucks through, crowds. We're going to have people shooting and killing people. It is always a situation where people are going to do bad things. So let's address the mental health things. Write to your delegates. How about, instead of all of these laws, how about somebody comes up and says, we're gonna raise taxes and we're gonna provide true mental health reform to Virginia. We're gonna truly address what the real issue is. How about the delegates lead by truthful example? Now, you know what? If the delegates want to come up, if the Democrats want to come up and say, we don't like guns, never have, never will, we don't think the Second Amendment is right, we don't want guns, at least that would be the truth.
I got you. Yes,
right?
True, yeah.
But to say, oh, it's a gun crisis, that is not the truth. So how about the delegates come up and actually truly talk about the real problems? Mental health is a big one. We have to get resources to people who are in mental health crises. We have to get people in the schools that can identify this at the teenage level.
Yeah.
And let me kind of start winding this down and let you really, really think about this. The semi-automatic bill, the prohibition bill, whether it's Senate Bill 16 or some variation, will not make anyone safer.
That's right.
It will not make anyone safer for this reason and this reason alone. If I want to go shoot a school up with an AR-15 and I go to my local gun shop and I want to buy that gun today because I'm going to do this today, right? And I can't get it here. I just drive to Moyock.
That's right.
And I buy it down there. And then I get that gun and I drive it into Virginia illegally, and then I go do the atrocious act.
That's right, Tim. Yeah.
So it is not going to make Virginia safer.
Yeah.
Because the guns are still available in other jurisdictions. And so if you want to have a national debate about this, that's one thing. But to say, again, another false narrative, to say that any gun laws in Virginia will make Virginia safer when these guns can and these weapons can be purchased in adjoining states,
Right.
is preposterous. It's another false narrative.
Yeah. A colleague and I were talking about that a couple of days ago. So okay, so I can't get one in Virginia. They go to the black market.
That's right.
And we were discussing this about all of this money being spent to try to get this passed and so forth. Why don't we give more support to the investigative agencies of the state police? They've got various organizations and the high crime capacity or search groups and so forth who know where the gun runners are. They know where these loopholes are. They know where they are. And I remember a long time ago, I was in upstate New York, and I was traveling, and there were about 4 or 5 state police cars on the side of the road, and I'm saying, man, what happened? Later to come find New York or the Albany Times newspaper, these individuals were carrying 42 firearms, 42 high-capacity firearms. And it's like, man, the hair stands up on the back of your neck. What incredible state troopers. They knew something. They knew to look for these. The resources we have can be more effective if the funding is there.
We want police to go door to door and arrest lawful gun owners, or we want police to go out and go after the bad guys.
Right.
If we have all these resources to arrest 2.5 million people in Virginia,
good point. Yeah,
we should have all the resources to
that's right.
interdict the bad guys, but we don't. We don't have those resources, and now we need to use the resources to truly go after the bad guys, and ultimately that is the truth. Those are the real. That is the real narrative. And it doesn't fit the gun crisis narrative.
That's right.
It doesn't fit. We have to outlaw this one particular type of firearm because it's very dangerous to society. It doesn't fit, and so the Democrats aren't going to talk about it. Right. There's a joint House resolution that they've proposed that's going to make Gun Violence Awareness Day in June of each year, right, based on the premise that thousands and thousands of people die each year due to gunfire, which most of those are suicides. We already know that. Yeah. And the other ones, most of them, major cities that have the strictest gun laws in the country. Baltimore, Maryland is worse than Mexico, in their violent crime rate. You have a better chance of being shot dead going to a Baltimore Orioles game than you do walking around in Tijuana. Okay,
crazy.
and guns are illegal in Baltimore, and so let's just be truthful. Okay, yeah. Let's just say what it is. They don't like guns. It's an agenda, and that's where we are. And then let's recognize that, and let's take a political position to say, no, you're not going to force this agenda on us. And how we're going to do that is we're going to win back all 3 House, Senate, in 2021. And I'm not saying the Republicans are any better in a lot of ways. They disappoint me quite often, most of the time. But at least they stand for the concept that lawful gun owners are not the problem.
Right.
So, all right, Facebook, I'm sorry I didn't get to all your questions, but I will say, Mark, look at this. 158 comments.
Yes, just last hour or so.
158 people have engaged. Share the video, have the conversations, talk about it. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys in Chesapeake tonight.
Right.
I will be in Hampton tomorrow. I might even be able to get Mark to show up. We'll see. Yeah. Mark's a Peninsula guy. Who knows? But we will see you next week at the Anderson Law Power Hour right here at 2 o'clock on Tuesdays.
Thanks. All right.